Your father thought truth could save him. Victor's voice echoed through the dark warehouse, gun raised, eyes cold. He was wrong, and so are you. Rain hammered the roof while Rowan stood trembling, one breath away from ending everything or being ended herself. Somewhere between fear and defiance, she realized survival wasn't about running anymore. It was about choosing to stand. Before we dive in, let me know, what time are you listening to this and where are you? Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. Chapter 1: The Wrong Number. Rowan pushed the door open, rain dripping from her coat. She dropped her bag and stood still for a moment, listening to the hum of the apartment. Everything was in its place, quiet, predictable. She liked it that way. She turned on the lamp, enough light to see, but not enough to disturb the calm. Her body ached from the late shift, her hands cold, her mind too awake to rest. A mug of tea sat untouched by the window. She almost threw it out, then left it there the way she always did. Half-finished things somehow felt safer than endings. Rain streaked the glass, blurring the city lights. Capitol Hill was still alive somewhere beyond the silence, but here there was only the faint sound of pipes and her own breathing. She lay down, pulling the blanket up to her chin. The apartment was small but steady, the kind of space that let her forget, at least for a while, everything she'd lost. Sleep hovered close. Then the phone rang. The sound tore through the stillness, sharp and wrong. Rowan sat up, heart thudding. The screen glowed on the nightstand, unknown number. 2:37 a.m. She hesitated. The rain pressed harder against the window. Then she answered. Hello. A pause. Not empty, but thick with something. Alertness, calculation. Then a man's voice, low level. Measured. Where is it? She blinked. I'm sorry. You've got the wrong, don't play games. The tone sliced through her sleep-heavy brain. Calm, controlled. Not rushed, not panicked, just certain. You must have dialed the wrong number, she said again, firmer now. A beat passed, then Rowan Hale. She froze. Her breath caught halfway between inhale and denial. No one used her full name like that, not anymore. Not outside the hospital, not since. Who are you? She asked. Her voice cracked, betrayed her steadiness. A faint shift in the man's breath, like a smile without warmth. Tell me what you're wearing. What I need to confirm something. Her heartbeat spiked. She sat straighter, instinct kicking in. I'm calling the police. No, you're not, the voice replied, still maddeningly calm. Because if you were, you'd have already hung up. And you're still listening. Rowan stood gripping the phone with both hands now. The apartment suddenly felt too exposed, too full of corners. She scanned the window, just black glass and water streaks. You've made a mistake, she said carefully. I rarely do. Another silence. Then my name is Adrian Moretti. It wasn't a name she recognized, but something about the way he said it made her stomach turn. Like the weight of the name did the work for him. You're mistaken, she said. Whatever you think you know. Sleep well, Rowan Hale. His voice dipped lower, almost thoughtful. You'll hear from me again. The line cut. She stared at the screen, blinking. The room had changed somehow, though nothing had moved. The walls leaned closer. The lamp cast stranger shadows. She set the phone down, tried to steady her hands, but her fingers trembled against the fabric of the couch. Her breath wouldn't settle. It was probably a prank. Someone messing with old records. Some weirdo bored in the middle of the night. That had to be it. Still, her eyes drifted back to the bookshelf. The photo frame had tilted slightly, as if nudged. The clock kept ticking. Rain pressed against the window, steady and mean. A pair of headlights flashed across the ceiling and vanished. She went to the window, pulled the curtain back, nothing. On the coffee table, her phone screen had gone dark again. The last call still sat in the log, unknown number, 2:37 a.m. By morning, the rain hadn't stopped, only softened into mist. Gray light bled through the hospital windows as Rowan slipped into her scrubs at Mercy Hill. The hum of machines filled the hallways, monitors, wheels, voices calling names over the intercom. The kind of noise that left no space for thought. She clocked in, hair still damp, and told herself to focus. One step, then another. Room to room, patient to patient. It was easier that way, to keep her hands busy, her mind elsewhere. Carly cracked a joke near the nurse's station. Someone laughed too loud, and Mae Thompson appeared beside her, handing over a clipboard. Rough night, May asked, studying her face. Rowan forced a small smile. You could say that. May tilted her head, noticing the dark circles under her eyes but not pushing further. That was what Rowan liked about her. She didn't ask unless asked to. When they turned back to their work, the world felt almost normal again. But it wouldn't stay that way for long. You look like you slept in a washing machine, May said, snapping her gum. Everything okay? Fine, Rowan murmured. May tilted her head. Fine, fine, or nurse, fine. Rowan forced a faint smile. The first one. May squinted at her but didn't press. They moved together through rounds, finishing notes, catching the rhythm of another endless day. Rowan was restocking supplies when the receptionist appeared at the doorway, half hidden behind a bouquet large enough to hide her face. For you, she said. Rowan blinked. Me. The flowers were too much blood-red roses wrapped in black paper tied with a silver ribbon. Beautiful, deliberate, and wrong. A white card rested among the stems. May leaned over her shoulder and let out a low whistle. Damn, someone's got a secret admirer. What's it say? Rowan hesitated before slipping the card out. In looping handwriting, wrong numbers sometimes lead to the right connections. A.M. Her throat tightened. May grinned. That's actually kind of romantic. Who's A.M., Dr. Old Flame Mystery Poet? Probably a mistake, Rowan said, sliding the card into her pocket. I don't know anyone with those initials. Then maybe you should, May teased, giving her a nudge before walking off. Rowan stared at the bouquet. The scent was rich, almost choking. She turned the flowers toward the wall as if hiding from their attention. By the end of her shift, exhaustion blurred everything. Maybe the card was a prank. Maybe the call had been a bad dream. Hospitals saw stranger things. She changed in the locker room, stuffed the card deeper into her bag. As she reached her old Toyota, another sound cut through the drizzle, a low hum, smooth and expensive. A black Mercedes idled a few spaces away, lights dimmed, engine steady. Her breath hitched. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out, umbrella in hand, moving with the calm. Even from a distance, she recognized it, the same voice, the same stillness. Her pulse stumbled. She slipped a hand into her coat pocket, thumb, brushing the cold metal of the pepper spray. He didn't move closer, only watched her beneath the rain. Rowan Hale, he said, voice steady, cutting clean through the storm. She didn't answer. He stopped at the edge of the puddles between them. Now we've met properly. The words hung there, quiet but certain. Rain pressed harder on the pavement, gathering around her shoes. Rowan's hand tightened around the spray, but she didn't step back. The man lowered his umbrella and glanced toward the black Mercedes, its engine still running, headlights, a dull glow in the mist. He gave a small nod, an invitation, or maybe a warning. She stood frozen, breath shallow, the rain slipping down her hairline in thin, cold threads. Get in, he said quietly. She didn't move. I'm not here to hurt you. His tone stayed measured, the same calm rhythm that had unnerved her through the phone. 5 minutes. Then you can walk away. Rowan exhaled slowly, hand tightening around the spray, before she slipped it back into her coat pocket. 5 minutes, she murmured, stepping toward the car. The inside smelled of leather and faint smoke. He closed the door gently once she slid in, then started the engine. Warm air hummed through the vents. Who are you? She asked. He didn't look at her right away. Adrian Moretti. I got that part, she said. Then you should also understand, he replied, turning his gaze to her. I don't make random calls in the middle of the night. The lines around his mouth hardly moved when he spoke. Controlled, polite, dangerous. He reached into his coat and she tensed, ready to lunge for the door handle. Instead, he pulled out a photograph, creased, water damaged, and held it toward her. Do you know this man? Rowan leaned closer, despite herself. The man in the picture was unfamiliar, square face, thinning hair, tired eyes. No, she said, shaking her head. Who is he? Luka Petrovich, Adrian said. You don't recognize the name, no. He studied her reaction as though cataloging every blink. He used a number almost identical to yours, only 1 digit apart. Her stomach sank. So you think that I know him? I think someone might think you do. He folded the photo, tucked it away. Luka's dead, 2 nights ago, and he didn't die quietly. The words hit like a slow drop of cold water down her spine. What does that mean? He leaned back, hands resting loosely on the steering wheel. It means you may have inherited his problem, and I need to know if that's going to be my problem too. I'm a nurse, she said, voice tightening. I go to work, I come home. I don't know anyone named Luka Petrovich, and I don't know what you want from me. He studied her in silence. The hum of the heater filled the pause. You're shaking, he said. I'm sitting in a stranger's car after he threatened me on the phone. His mouth curved slightly. Fair point. For a moment, neither spoke. The rain softened against the windshield thin streaks, catching the yellow light from the lot lamps. Adrian broke the silence first. Luca took something valuable from people I do business with. They think someone close to him might still have it. His contact list was wiped clean except for your number. Rowan stared at him. So you tracked me down because of a typo. Call it coincidence, he said. Or bad luck. She shook her head, incredulous. You could have just asked me instead of showing up in the dark like what his tone held a trace of challenge, like someone who already decided I'm guilty. A faint flicker crossed his eyes, something between amusement and fatigue. Guilt isn't what I'm after, Ms. Hale. I'm after truth. He reached into his coat again this time, pulling out a small silver card case. From it, he drew a single business card and placed it on the console between them. If anyone contacts you about Luca, or if anything unusual happens, call that number. She hesitated before taking it. The card was simple, embossed in black, Adrian Moretti, executive consultant. No title, no company. Just a phone number. I don't want to be involved in this, she said. You already are. He opened the door, letting in a rush of damp air. 5 minutes are up. She stepped out without looking back. The Mercedes drifted away, red lights fading into rain. By the time she reached her building, the storm had softened to a steady drizzle. The stairwell smelled faintly of rust. Her shoes left small prints on the concrete as she climbed, keys pressed between her fingers. At the landing, a thin strip of light cut across her door, slightly open. She stopped. She was sure she'd locked it that morning. The hall bulb flickered once. Something shifted behind the door, too soft to name. She took a breath, stepped closer, touched the knob. It was cold. Then her phone rang. The number wasn't saved, but she knew who it was. Adrian, she answered in a whisper. What do you want? Don't go in. His voice was low, controlled. Someone's already there. Her hand froze mid-turn. How do you? I have eyes near your building. Get back downstairs. Now! Her pulse jumped. You're watching me. Later, he said, just move. Something creaked beyond the door. She didn't wait. The stairwell blurred as she ran down skipping steps, shoes slapping the concrete. When she reached the lobby, headlights flashed through the glass doors, a black sedan idling at the curb. The passenger door opened. Adrian stepped out, rain sliding off his coat, the same unreadable calm etched across his face. She didn't ask how he'd gotten there so fast. She just crossed the sidewalk and climbed in. The door closed with a soft thud, sealing the noise of the storm away. For a long moment, neither spoke. The wipers moved back and forth, steady as breathing. Was anyone in there? She asked finally. I didn't let them stay long enough to find out, he said, pulling into traffic. They were gone before you arrived. Huey kept his eyes on the road. A man named Kazan doesn't like loose ends. If he thinks you're connected to Luca, he'll want answers. The city slid by in streaks of sodium light. Her hand trembled as she brushed rainwater from her sleeve. You're saying this is about that number? It's never just about numbers, he said quietly. She turned toward the window, the streets reflecting in her eyes, wet pavement. Neon signs bleeding into puddles. Something in her chest knotted tighter, then broke. I lost my parents in a fire, she said suddenly, voice catching. It was years ago. Everyone said it was an accident, but I don't think it was. My father worked for a shipping firm. He came home one night smelling of gasoline. 2 weeks later, everything burned. Adrian didn't interrupt. The rhythm of the wipers filled the silence. I still dream about it, she continued. The heat, the sound of glass shattering. I woke up outside on the lawn and She stopped, breath uneven. After that, I stopped letting people close. It's easier that way. He turned, slightly studying her profile in the glow of passing headlights. My father died too, he said. Not by fire, by loyalty misplaced. She glanced at him, uncertain. He trusted the wrong man, Adrian went on, a business partner who wanted his seat. By the time I was old enough to understand, the family name was already soaked in blood. I learned early that trust is the most expensive currency there is. The car slowed at a red light. Rain drummed harder on the roof. Rowan stared ahead, hands clasped tight in her lap. "So what do we do now?" "For tonight you stay somewhere safe," he said. "I'll have the apartment checked." "Safe," she repeated softly, almost to herself. That word stopped meaning anything a long time ago. He didn't argue. When the light turned green, the car moved again. City lights scattered across the windshield, bending into streaks as they passed under a bridge. She turned her face toward the glass, watching them stretch and blur. For once, the silence between them didn't feel hostile. It was a quiet that acknowledged something fragile, grief recognizing itself in another form. The car wound through the northern suburbs until the skyline vanished behind fog and trees. Rowan barely spoke, his hands steady on the wheel, the expression unreadable. When the gates appeared, a long stretch of wrought iron framed by stone pillars, she almost laughed. The place looked more like an embassy than a home. Security lights swept the driveway as the gates opened in silence. Adrian parked near the steps and got out first. She hesitated before following him through the double doors. The foyer stretched upward, marble floors reflecting the chandelier's pale light. A man in a dark suit greeted them with a quiet nod and disappeared down the corridor. "You'll stay here for a few days," Adrian said, "until we know what Kazan wants." Rowan crossed her arms. "And you? What exactly do you want?" His gaze flicked to her. "To keep you alive. Everything else can wait." She almost argued but stopped. Exhaustion had settled into her bones, the kind that no amount of sleep could touch. She followed him into a study lined with glass shelves and heavy books. A fire burned behind a screen, though the heat barely reached her. Adrian poured a drink untouched and set the glass aside. "I looked into your father," he said. Her chest tightened. He worked for a logistics company called Northline Imports. On paper, legitimate. In practice, it laundered money through shell routes for Kazan's network. That's not possible. He looked directly at her. "You said he came home smelling of gasoline the night before the fire." Rowan's throat went dry. The memory had been buried for years, a fragment she'd refused to touch. "So what are you saying?" she asked quietly. "That maybe he found something he wasn't supposed to?" Adrian's tone softened, almost reluctant. "And maybe that's why you're on their radar now." Before she could respond, the lights flickered. Then 3 sharp cracks. Gunfire. Rowan flinched, instinct pulling her to the floor. Adrian moved faster, crossed the room in one motion, and dragged her behind the heavy desk. The next shot shattered glass somewhere down the hall. "Stay down," he ordered, already pulling a pistol from the drawer. The calm in his voice was almost worse than panic. She pressed her palms to the floor, listening to the muffled chaos beyond the door footsteps, shouting the thud of bodies hitting marble. Another burst of gunfire. Adrian peered through the gap in the curtains, then turned jaw tight. 2 cars. They cut the power. "We've got 5 men on the property." "How can you?" He silenced her with a look. "Because this isn't the first time, Rowan." A crash echoed through the hallway. Adrian pushed her lower as fragments of glass sprinkled across the desk. A bullet had pierced the window above. He raised the gun, fired once, twice. The sound was deafening in the confined space. Then suddenly silence, only the ticking of the mantel clock and the hiss of wind through the broken glass. After a moment, a voice crackled through his earpiece. "All clear. 3 down, 2 fled." Adrian lowered the gun. His breathing was steady, but his shoulders had gone rigid. Rowan stayed crouched on the carpet, palms shaking. "What just happened?" "Kazan sent a message," he said. "He wants what your father took." "I don't even know what that is." Her voice broke. "I didn't ask for any of this." He holstered the weapon, walked toward her, and stopped just close enough that she could see the faint tremor in his hand before he tucked it into his pocket. "Neither did I." They stood there, the fire snapping softly behind them. Rowan's pulse slowed, the adrenaline fading into something colder. "I can't stay here," she whispered. "You said a few days, but if this is what a day looks like, you're not leaving." He cut in. She stared at him, anger rising. "You don't get to decide that." "Yes," he said quietly, "I do." Something in his tone, firm but not cruel, made her stop. She turned away, staring at the cracked window, rain still beating against it. "You think hiding me here will change anything? I think keeping you alive is a start." Her breath caught in the pause that followed. He stepped past her toward the door and called for someone named Lauren. Rowan's eyes lingered on the firelight reflecting off the gunmetal tucked at his side. The man standing there wasn't the calm voice on the phone anymore. He looked sharper, angrier, almost human in his restraint. Adrian stopped at the threshold, speaking so low she almost missed it. "I'm not protecting you out of obligation." She looked up startled. "Then why?" But he was already walking down the hall, coat brushing the floor, leaving only the echo of his words and the faint smell of gunpowder in the air. Morning came washed in thin sunlight, the kind Seattle rarely offered. The storm had passed, leaving the air clear and still. Rowan woke to the quiet hum of the estate, distant voices, footsteps fading through the hall. Lauren stood near the fence, pruning shears in hand, cigarette balanced between two fingers. He glanced over, eyes narrowing slightly. "You're up early." "I couldn't sleep," she said. He nodded once, snipped another branch. "No one sleeps well here. Too quiet." She picked up a fallen orange, the skin still cool with dew. "Do you work for him long?" "Long enough," he replied. "Long enough to forget what the old job was." Something about the way he said it, steady and motionless, made her wonder what kind of man Adrian had to be for loyalty to last that long. "Don't let the silence fool you," Lauren added, dropping the cigarette butt into a bucket of water. "It only means the storm hasn't decided where to hit next." Rowan gave a faint, nervous laugh. Comforting. He smirked, handed her a small basket, and went back to trimming. The rest of the morning passed with small movements, the sound of pruning, the rustle of leaves, the faint clink of glass when someone set the lunch table indoors. Rowan found herself slipping into the rhythm of the house. Books surrounded her, rows of dark spines with gold lettering. She ran her fingers along them absent-mindedly until her phone buzzed on the table. May's name lit up the screen. "Hey, Rowan," said, keeping her voice soft. "Are you okay?" May asked immediately. "Someone came by the hospital asking for you. Said he was a relative. I told him I'd never heard the name." Rowan's pulse stuttered. "What name? Kazan? Victor Kazan. Does that mean something?" She swallowed hard. "You did the right thing." May hesitated. "Rowan, what's going on?" "You sound. I'll explain later, I promise. Just be careful, okay?" "Jesus, Rowan, you're scaring me." "Yeah," she whispered, glancing toward the door. "I scare myself too." When she hung up, the quiet pressed in again. Rain drifted faintly through the open window. She moved around the room, running her fingers along the spines of books, economics, history, philosophy. Names she didn't know. Near the corner shelf, an envelope set apart from the others. Her name written across the front. It hadn't been there before. She turned it over, no seal. A photograph showed her parents by the lake cabin, her father's arm around her shoulders. Sunlight on all three faces. A small crease crossed the middle, the same fold she'd made years ago to fit it in her backpack. She flipped it over. Two intersecting lines, a string of numbers, coordinates. Her pulse kicked, footsteps behind her. Adrian stood at the doorway, half lit by the lamp. "You shouldn't be going through my things." "It was just there," she said, holding up the photo, "with my name on it." He came closer, glanced at it, and stopped. Something shifted in his face, familiar sadness quickly buried. "Where did you get that here? In your library. Why do you have a picture of me and my family?" He took the photo, gently studied the back, then exhaled. "That symbol belongs to your father's company, or what was left of it." She looked at him. And the numbers. His eyes met hers, steady, unreadable. "Maybe it's time you saw for yourself. The truth about what? The truth about him," he said. The room stilled. Rowan's hand tightened around the photo. Something deep in her, fear or need, refused to release it. Thunder rolled far off, low and steady, like a door beginning to open. The drive to Chelon wound through the foothills. Adrian kept his eyes on the road, one hand on the wheel. Rowan sat beside him, tracing the numbers on the back of the photo until they blurred. When the trees finally broke, the lake appeared broad, still unchanged. Her breath caught. It was the same view she'd seen the day her parents died. Adrian turned down a narrow path toward the woods. The cabin waited at the end roof, sagging walls dark with soot. Rowan stepped out. The smell of old smoke still clung to everything. She brushed her hand over the doorway, the wood rough beneath her fingers. Time hadn't erased the burn. It had only buried it deeper. "This was home," she murmured. Adrian scanned the clearing. Are you sure you want to go in? It's just a house, she said though. Her voice trembled. The air was cold and heavy. Burnt furniture lay in fragments, dust layered over everything like gray snow. Rowan's steps stirred faint traces of ash. Near the back wall where the kitchen had been, a glint caught her eye beneath a loose plank. She pried it open, a rusted tin box. Adrian crouched beside her. What is it? Rowan eased the lid off. A thin chain lay coiled inside a silver pendant, marked by a triangle crossed with three curved lines. My father's necklace, she whispered. He wore this every day. Adrian's gaze sharpened. That mark isn't decorative. What does it mean? He rubbed the dirt from the metal. It's a cipher, old banking code, used by Moretti affiliates or Kazans. Your father must have handled their transfers. Her stomach dropped. You're saying he worked for your family? Maybe for both, Adrian said quietly. Sometimes loyalty and survival look the same. Rowan rose, voice shaking. He wasn't part of this. I didn't say he was, Adrian answered softer now. But if he tried to expose Kaz in this, he lifted the pendant. Might be why he died. She turned away. Light shifted through the broken roof, shadow crawling over the burned walls. I used to think the fire took everything, she murmured. Maybe it only finished what someone else started. He said nothing. The silence was almost reverent. Rowan stepped onto the porch, the pendant pressed into her palm. Adrian joined her, scanning the tree line. Why bring me here, she asked. Because you deserve answers, he said, even the ones that hurt. Wind stirred through wet pines. She turned the pendant in her hand. It no longer looked like jewelry but a key. Then came a low hum from across the lake. It grew into the growl of an engine. Adrian stiffened. Get down! She barely breathed. What a rifle cracked. He lunged, pulling her down as bark exploded beside them. The sound split the air clean open. Another shot. Adrian drew his gun, eyes narrowing. Across the lake, a black SUV sat half hidden in the trees. Through the glare, she saw a figure lift a weapon. Kaz and Adrian muttered. A bullet tore through the porch. He grabbed her arm. Run when I say. Don't look back. Her body locked. The roar of the engine, the gunfire, the smell of mud, all of it dragged her into the past, the fire, her father's shout, the shove that saved her. Adrian yanked her forward. They stumbled to the truck as a shot hit the ground behind them, birds scattering from the trees. He slammed the door while started the engine and tore down the muddy road. The lake vanished in the mirrors, the gunfire fading into rain. He swept a flashlight across the room, then set a lantern on an old barrel. We'll stay till morning, he said. They'll expect us to run for the city. Rowan nodded, throat tight. And after that, then we find out what your father was protecting. He clipped the pendant to a small reader. Numbers filled the screen columns of encrypted transfers. He was moving millions, Adrian said. Not stealing. Redirecting. Redirecting to who? Maybe to buy his way out. Maybe to bring Kazan down. Depends on what he believed in before the fire. The pendant lay between them, cold and silent. Rowan's phone buzzed. She read the message. Your father tried to sell us out. Don't make the same mistake. Adrian took the phone, deleted it. Kazan's testing nerves. You're saying he's watching us. I'm saying he never stops. She folded her arms. How do I know you're not part of this? He met her gaze. If I were you, wouldn't still be reading that message. That's not an answer. There isn't one, he said quietly. You can trust me or not. The lantern flickered. For a moment his face looked older, worn thin by years of vigilance. He turned away, checking his weapon, then sat near the door. Rowan sank onto a stack of tarps, jacket pulled close. Her father's voice echoed in memory, his shout lost in smoke, his hand reaching for hers. Across the room, Adrian sat motionless, listening for what she couldn't hear. Beneath that stillness lay something quieter, a weariness untouched by fear. Their eyes met once. Neither spoke. The silence stretched uneasy but almost gentle. She leaned back, watching the lantern fade. The danger outside felt distant now. What lingered was the weight she carried, the doubt of who might ever stay. Wind slipped through the cracks. Adrian shifted, the light trembled, and the night settled into that fragile pause before movement. His hands were steady on the wheel, focus pinned to the road ahead. Yet she could sense the strain beneath it, the same restless current that lived in her chest. Rowan turned to the window, the darkness sliding past in streaks. Words rose before she could stop them. If I keep running, she said quietly, they'll just find someone else to use. Someone who doesn't even know why. Adrian glanced her way. You're not responsible for Kazan's mess. I'm not talking about Kazan, she said quietly. I'm talking about my father. About all the things he tried to fix too late. He didn't reply right away. The sound of the rain filled the space between them, a rhythm steady enough to lean on. I used to think hiding was a kind of survival, Rowan continued. But maybe it's just another way of dying slower. Adrian's jaw tightened, then eased. What are you saying I'm done running? Her voice didn't shake this time. You said that pendant could access their accounts. I'm going to use it to draw Kazan out. The silence that followed felt heavier than any argument. Finally, Adrian nodded once, slow and deliberate. Then you'll need bait strong enough to make him come to you. I have his money, she said. He gave a faint, grim smile. Now you sound like someone who understands power. He reached into the glove compartment, pulled out a small flash drive, and set it on the console between them. A copy of everything from the pendant. You choose the location, the timing. But if we do this, we do it clean. Rowan picked up the drive. The plastic was cold against her palm, lighter than the weight it carried. You trust me with this? I'm trusting you to decide, he said. That's different. The wipers beat faster as the rain thickened. Then through the curtain of water, headlights flared ahead, 3 vehicles parked across both lanes. Adrian's hand went instinctively to the gear shift. Brace. He swerved, hard tires skidding as one of the cars pulled forward. Men stepped out, dark shapes against the glare. No weapons raised yet. This wasn't an ambush. It was an invitation. Rowan's pulse jumped. It's him, isn't it? Victor doesn't show up unless he wants to talk, Adrian said, which means he thinks he's already won. What do we do? Not what he expects. Adrian threw the car into reverse, spun the wheel, and turned sharply onto a side road that cut toward the freeway. The engine roared gravel, spitting beneath the tires. Behind them, the black SUVs hesitated, then followed. The chase didn't last long. The storm swallowed everything. After a few miles, Adrian pulled off at an old motel, the kind that looked forgotten even when the neon sign still flickered vacancy. They parked under the overhang, both breathing hard. Rowan didn't realize she was shaking until she stepped into the narrow hallway, soaked through. Adrian handed her a key from the night clerk without a word. Water dripped from their clothes onto the carpet. He locked the door, checked the window, then sat across from her. Rowan set the flash drive on the table between them. If I send that data to him just a fraction, he'll believe I'm ready to trade. Adrian leaned back, studying her face. And are you? She met his gaze, the stormlight flickering across her features. I'm ready to end it. Something passed between them, unspoken, raw, not trust exactly, but recognition. He nodded once. Then pick your battlefield. The clock ticked softly. She opened her laptop, connected the drive, and began to type. Lines of code streamed past the cursor, pulsing steady and alive. Adrian watched without a word, the glow washing her face in pale blue. Her hands moved faster, one last sequence, one final trap. The screen dimmed, then steadied. She sat back, eyes on the code. Her voice came quiet even. Let him come. The glow held between them, sharp and still. Fog drifted low over Tacoma Bay, swallowing the edges of the world. Adrian parked a few blocks away, checked his pistol, and glanced toward the water. Rowan stood by the car hood, pulled close, the pendant cold against her skin. Its weight felt like a promise she couldn't put down. This is where he chose, she asked. He likes ghosts, Adrian said. They don't testify. They walked in silence toward the pier, the water lapping faintly against the pilings below. The world felt paused, only the echo of their footsteps and the low hum of wind moving through the mass. A black SUV waited at the far end, its engine idling. 2 men stepped out first, large, suited, deliberate in their movements. Then Victor Kazan emerged. He wasn't tall, but the stillness around him made him larger. His coat was immaculate, shoes untouched by the mud. Ms. Hale, he said, voice smooth as varnish. I was starting to think you'd inherited your father's habit of being late. Rowan met his gaze steady. You killed him, Victor smiled without warmth. He killed himself the moment he thought honesty was an option. Her jaw tightened. He tried to stop you. He tried to bargain with decency, Victor said, gesturing lazily. A foolish currency. Your father wanted to erase what he built, but the world doesn't let men walk away clean. Adrian shifted slightly beside her eyes, tracking the men behind Victor. You talk too much. The crime boss gave a short laugh. And you talk like someone who doesn't understand hierarchy anymore. You're out of your league, Moretti. The name landed like a blow in the air. Rowan turned to Adrian, but he didn't flinch. You want the pendant, she said to Victor, cutting through the moment. That's why you came. I want what's inside it, Victor replied. The data, the keys, the accounts your father hid. You don't even know what you're holding. I know it's the reason he died, she said, and I'm not giving it to you. For a second, the wind carried only the creak of metal. Then Victor's smile faded. That's unfortunate. He lifted his hand. One of his men drew a gun. Adrian reacted first. He slammed into Rowan, shoving her sideways just as the first shot cracked the air. Splinters exploded from the pier. The next shot tore through the space where her chest had been a second earlier. Rowan hit the ground hard. The sound of the ocean roared in her ears. Adrian crouched beside her, firing twice in quick succession. One of Victor's men dropped. The other ducked behind a crate. Victor stepped back toward his car, expression unchanged. End it, he ordered. A bullet sang past them, grazing the metal beam behind her. Adrian turned, firing again, but not before another shot caught his shoulder. He staggered, teeth clenched, the gun dropping from his grasp. Adrian Rowan crawled toward him, grabbing his arm as blood began to soak through the fabric. Stay down, he hissed, dragging her behind a stack of barrels. His breath came sharp and uneven, eyes scanning for movement. He's retreating. Listen. She strained her ears. Somewhere beyond the fog, sirens wailed, faint but growing louder. Victor cursed under his breath and gestured to his driver. Within moments, the SUV reversed tires, screeching against wet pavement. The echo faded, leaving only the rain, the sirens, and the sound of her heartbeat. Rowan pressed her hands against Adrian's wound. You're bleeding too much. I've had worse, he said, though his voice wavered. Her hands trembled, slick with blood and rainwater. Why did you do that? You could have. Because they were aiming for you. She blinked hard, rain streaking down her face. You shouldn't have. Don't argue, he muttered. You're wasting time. The sirens drew closer now, their lights flickering weakly through the fog. She tore a strip from her sleeve, pressing it tighter against the wound. Adrian reached up suddenly, fingers closing around her wrist. His grip was firm despite the tremor. Don't let them win because you're scared, he whispered. Her breath caught. The words sank deeper than any wound could. He released her head, resting back against the crate, eyes half shut but still alert. The sirens grew louder, washing over the sound of waves crashing against the pier. The hospital room was quiet except for the slow pulse of the heart monitor. Rowan sat by the window, a paper cup cooling in her hands, watching the reflection of Adrian's bed in the glass. He slept lightly, the bandage at his shoulder stained a deep red-brown beneath the gauze. Every now and then his breath hitched, a flash of pain crossing his face before vanishing again. She'd lost count of the hours since the docks. Lauren arrived around noon carrying a black briefcase and the same impassive expression he always wore. Security reports say Kazin's gone underground, he said, setting the case on the table. The press is starting to spin it, missing shipments, anonymous leaks. People are guessing who pulled the trigger. Do they know about the data? Adrian's voice was rough but steady. Not yet, Lauren replied. But someone's feeding stories to the underground circuit, claims that you made a deal with Kazan, that you're covering his trail. Rowan glanced at Adrian. His jaw tightened, though he didn't look surprised. They're trying to turn it, he said. Classic move. Lauren nodded once. I'll handle containment, but we'll need to secure the data externally off-grid. I brought a drive for transfer. He opened the briefcase, revealing a small hard drive and a stack of documents. Rowan stepped closer, instinct prickling at the back of her neck. Something about the drive's label caught her eye, a faint logo etched into the casing. She recognized it. Northline Imports, her father's company, the same one Kazan had used for laundering. Where did you get that? She asked. Lauren didn't look up. Standard supply. Why she reached for it, turning it over in her hand. The mark wasn't faint, it was deliberate. This isn't standard. Adrian sat forward despite the pained voice low. Lauren answered her. He hesitated, eyes flicking between them. It's just hardware, Adrian. Don't start seeing ghosts. Then why does it carry the same serial sequence as Kazin's network? Adrian pressed. For the first time, something wavered behind Lauren's calm. His fingers twitched almost imperceptibly. You think I'd sell you out? I think someone did, Adrian said, voice flat. Rowan stepped back, the drive heavy in her hand. You knew about the dock, she said quietly. You knew where we'd be. Lauren's silence answered for him. He exhaled, weary. It's not what you think. Then tell me, Adrian pressed. You can't fight everyone, Lauren said. You build an empire out of shadows, eventually one of them learns your language. He turned for the door. Lauren, no response. The door clicked shut, leaving the faint trace of disinfectant and betrayal in the air. The heart monitor kept its steady rhythm louder than before. Rowan set the drive down carefully. He was your friend. He was family, Adrian said. That's what makes it worse. He leaned back, the weight settling in his shoulders. It's not just Kazan anymore. Cops pressed my own men, they're closing in. How do we stop it? He looked at her eyes, dulled by pain, but steady. We go public. Every file, every account. Once it's out, Kazan's leverage dies. That'll take you down too. It already has. Rowan stared at the blurred city beyond the window. So we burn it all, she said. Adrian said nothing, and that silence was enough. She walked the corridor to her room, the floor humming faintly beneath her steps. The sheets were untouched, the air sterile and still. She placed the drive on the table, then turned toward the glass partition. Across the way, Adrian stood alone, his outline fixed against dim light. Rowan watched for a moment, her palm resting on the cool glass, the city glowing faintly below them. Far-off thunder rolled low and spent like the closing of a long confession. The elevator descended beneath the old Moretti headquarters, leaving the light and noise of the upper floors behind. Adrian's footsteps echoed ahead, the glow from his phone, painting thin arcs of light along the floor. This is it, he said. The core vault. My father built it when he still believed information could be controlled. Rowan followed the pendant looped around her wrist. The cold metal seemed to pulse faintly, as though aware it was home again. And now Adrian gave a small, humorless smile. Now it's the only place left to hide truth. At the end of the corridor stood a sealed door with a biometric panel. Adrian pressed his palm to it. The lock hissed open, revealing a room that looked more like a tomb than a server hall, rows of inactive consoles and old terminals coated in dust. This place hasn't been touched in years, he murmured. Rowan moved to the central terminal, brushed off the surface, and connected the pendant. The monitors flickered to life, pale blue light washing over their faces. Lines of code streamed down the screen before settling on a single file name. A. Hale, confidential. Her throat tightened. He was here. Adrian nodded. Open it. She clicked. The speakers crackled, then a voice filled the room, older, weary, unmistakably familiar. If you're hearing this, it means I trusted the right person. They'll tell you I was weak, that I sold them out. The truth is, I tried to save what I could before the fire. Rowan's hands trembled. The voice continued calm despite its exhaustion. The network runs through Kazan. Every shipment, every bank transfer. The proof is here, hidden in the backup chain, encrypted through Northline's servers. Don't let them bury it. Don't let my mistake become yours. Silence followed, long and hollow. Then a click, the sound of a man taking one last breath before the world erased him. Rowan stood, frozen, tears gathering, but not falling. The grief wasn't new. It had just found a voice again. He knew they'd kill him, she whispered. And he left this for me. Adrian's hand rested briefly on her shoulder. Then let's finish what he started. He moved to the console, fingers flying over the keys. The screens filled with encrypted data fragments of the network her father described. This connects every shell company Kazan's used for the last decade, Adrian said. Money trails, offshore accounts, political payoffs. Enough to collapse half his empire. Rowan wiped her face, focusing on the screen. Can we send it to the Bureau? We can, he said, but once it's out, there's no taking it back. Good, she said. Let them see everything. He nodded once, then entered the final command. A progress bar appeared, upload to FBI archive node. 78%, 93%, complete. The servers hummed louder, the data transferring across secure lines. Somewhere above them, the world began to shift. Adrian exhaled. It's done. Minutes later, alerts started pouring through his phone news feeds, lighting up with headlines, encrypted calls from his network, reports of raids across the West Coast. Victor's properties seized, warehouses, surrounded, accounts frozen. The quiet empire crumbling in real time. Rowan watched the chaos unfold on the screen, her heartbeat slow and steady. For the first time, she didn't feel powerless. Then Adrian's phone buzzed again, an unmarked number. He hesitated before answering, putting it on speaker. A man's voice came through, low and deliberate. "You think this ends with data?" Victor's tone was calm, almost amused. "You've taken my money, but I still have leverage. A nurse named May Thompson? Yes, the friend who covered your shifts." Rowan's stomach clenched. "She's quite brave," Victor went on. "You have 12 hours to return what's left of the pendant. After that, bravery won't help her." The line went dead. Adrian swore under his breath, already typing. "He's bluffing." Rowan shook her head. "He doesn't bluff." He turned to her. "Then we call the bureau. They'll know." She unplugged the pendant from the console and slipped it into her pocket. "If I tell them May dies before they move, he wants me, not the data." "Rowan, stay here," she said. "They'll trace this place if you start another transmission." "Rowan, don't be stupid." Her eyes met his, steady and unflinching. "This isn't fear. It's responsibility." He started to argue, but she was already moving toward the elevator, the pendant clenched tight in her fist. The door slid shut behind her with a hiss, leaving Adrian in the echo of fading light, and the warehouse loomed ahead, silent, skeletal, its windows blown out like blind eyes. The same place her father had vanished from the world. Victor Kazan was waiting. He stood beneath a single hanging bulb, the light slicing across his face in uneven strips. A gun hung loosely from his hand, the casual posture of someone who believed the ending was already written. "You look like him," he said, voice echoing through the hollow space. "Same eyes, same delusion that truth can save anyone." Rowan stopped a few feet away, the pendant glinting in her hand. "I didn't come for redemption," she said evenly. "I came to stop you from making anyone else pay for your sins." He smiled thinly. "Sins are a currency, my dear. People only start counting when they run out." "You've been counting for a long time," she replied. His smile faded. "Where is the drive?" "In the hands of people who aren't afraid of you," she said. Then, slipping her phone from her pocket, she pressed the small button Adrian had helped her set earlier. A faint beep answered, followed by the soft hum of a live stream connection. Projectors flickered to life along the walls, throwing lines of numbers and accounts into the air. Offshore transfers, hidden ledgers, her father's evidence. Victor's face twisted. "What have you done?" broadcast Rowan said. "The world's watching." He aimed his gun. "You think they'll believe you?" "They'll believe you," she said, tapping the phone. His voice filled the room. "Burn the evidence. I'll deal with the family myself." Victor fired. The shot split the air. Rowan staggered back. Then Adrian burst through the doorway, slamming into him. The gun skidded across the floor. They grappled until Victor's fists sent Adrian down hard. Rowan spotted the pendant, snapped it open, and hurled it toward the projectors. Sparks jumped, the recording looping louder, Victor's own words swallowing him whole. He turned, gun raised again, but the next shot wasn't his. One of his men lowered his smoking weapon. "Price on your head's worth more than your orders." Victor felt his voice breaking. "Your father thought he could change the rules. So do you." Then nothing. Adrian rose, breathing ragged. "It's over." The light flickered out. The room reeked of gunpowder and metal. Rowan crouched, picking up the broken pendant. Its cracked surface caught her reflection, pale, steady. She closed her hand around it, a slow exhale leaving her chest. The night felt emptied no longer, shouting, only breathing. Morning bled in through the blinds, thin and quiet. Machines murmured somewhere nearby. Rowan woke to antiseptic and gauze pain, dull but alive. For a moment she lay still beneath the pale light, listening to the steady rhythm of the world, learning how to be calm again. A soft voice broke it. "You're awake." May stood at the end of the bed, her smile small but real. Her left arm was in a sling, a bruise tracing her jaw. "They said you'd be fine. You just needed time." Rowan blinked, the words drifting through her. "May, you're alive." May chuckled weakly. "Yeah, they got them, all of them. The police raided 3 warehouses last night. The FBI is already claiming credit. She sat down on the chair, brushing a strand of hair from her face. It's over, Rowan. You did it. Rowan tried to speak, but her throat tightened. The relief wasn't sharp. It was slow, heavy, spreading through her chest like warmth after frostbite. May reached out, touching her wrist. You should rest. He's been waiting outside all morning. May tilted her head toward the doorway. You know who? Rowan glanced toward the glass wall. Adrian stood there, hands in his coat pockets, the faint scar on his jaw catching the light. He didn't move, as if crossing the room might break something fragile. May gave a small nod and left. The door closed with a quiet click. He stayed near the entrance, eyes flicking to the bandages on her arm, the tremor in her fingers. You don't have to stay, she murmured. I've been here since the first night. Something in his tone, plain, steady, undid her. Tears slipped down without warning. He sat beside her, hesitated, then placed his hand over hers. The warmth anchored her. I thought if I ran far enough it would all disappear, the fire, the guilt, she said. It doesn't, he replied. It just changes shape. She turned to him. What do you do with it? You keep living? Until it stops burning. Her breathing eased. The ache in her chest felt different now, still there, but no longer sharp. His fingers tightened slightly, asking without words. She didn't pull away. He leaned closer, the distance between them, narrowing until their foreheads nearly met. The kiss that followed was quiet and certain, not a promise, just proof that she was still here. When they parted, she drew a long breath. A nurse's cart rolled past in the hallway. The courtroom carried the kind of silence that wasn't empty. It pressed down, filling every breath. The ceiling lights cast a pale glow over the polished wood, the faint scent of paper and old varnish clinging to the air. Rowan sat at the witness stand, a glass of water untouched beside her palms, resting flat on the rail to keep them steady. Her voice, when it came, was quiet but unwavering. Victor Kazan built an empire on fear. My father tried to stop him, and when he couldn't, he left a record so that someone else could. The stenographer's keys clattered in rhythm with her words. Across the room, rows of officials and reporters watched, pens poised, cameras waiting for something dramatic. But there was no drama here, only truth being dragged into daylight after too many years underground. She spoke of the laundering networks, the dummy corporations, the victims coerced into silence. No embellishment, no tears, just facts, the kind her father had died trying to bring forward. At the back of the courtroom, Adrian sat among the spectators, unrecognizable from the man who once ruled in shadows. The tailored suits, the guarded posture, all replaced by quiet restraint. His eyes never left her, though he didn't interfere, didn't claim any part of the moment. This was hers. The prosecutor's final question was simple. Ms. Hale, why did you choose to come forward now? Rowan hesitated, looking down at her bandaged wrist, then back up. Because I spent half my life hiding from ghosts, and I realized they only stop chasing you when you turn around. A murmur rippled through the room. Cameras clicked. The judge thanked her for her testimony, then dismissed her with a nod that carried something close to respect. She stepped down from the stand, the wooden floor cold beneath her shoes. The noise met her instantly, the rush of reporters' microphones flashing like sparks. Ms. Hale, do you believe the Moretti family was complicit? Did you work with the FBI directly? What message do you have for the victims of Kazan's network? Rowan stopped long enough for the crowd to quiet. I don't want anyone else to live, afraid, she said simply. That's all. The chaos resumed, voices, flashes, hands reaching, and then cutting through it, a presence. Adrian emerged from the corridor, his coat collar turned up against the wind, expression unreadable beneath the noise. He didn't speak as he reached her, just extended a hand. She took it and the crowd parted, unsure whether to follow or step back. Together they moved through the throng, down the courthouse steps to the waiting car. The sudden quiet felt heavier than the noise had. Rowan looked out the window where people still gathered in small clusters, trading speculation for certainty. Adrian sat beside her, head tilted toward the sunlight cutting across the dashboard. The world doesn't get cleaner, he said. It just rearranges the dirt. She turned to him. Then what was the point? He smiled faintly, the first trace of warmth in days. You gave it a clean corner. That's more than most ever do. Her shoulders eased. Not pride, just release. the kind that came when something long buried finally stopped breathing beneath her skin. Traffic crawled along the city streets, Seattle gleaming damp under the noon light. The sound of horns' footsteps, the rhythm of life continuing, none of it sharp, none of it intrusive. Rowan leaned back, her hand still in his. Neither said anything as the car rolled toward the intersection. The signal ahead blinked from red to green, casting a soft reflection across the windshield. By late spring, the hills around Lake Chelan had turned the color of new leaves, a green that didn't belong to memory but to renewal. A few charred beams still marked the edges of what used to be home, but now pieces of fresh timber lay stacked neatly beside them. Rowan knelt near the foundation, her hands dusted with soil, guiding a plank into place. She had never built anything before, not really, but she liked the rhythm of it, the simple order of hammer-nail breath. Behind her, Adrian was digging into the ground, his shirt clinging to his back, streaks of dirt on his arms. There was no trace of the man who once commanded fear in boardrooms or alleyways. He looked content here, rough around the edges and entirely human. "You're putting that beam in crooked," he called, voice teasing. She glanced over her shoulder, grinning. "I thought I was the one following the blueprint." He came closer, crouched beside her, and adjusted the plank. Their shoulders brushed a fleeting contact that said more than words. "There," he said, tapping the wood. "Now it won't fall apart on you." Rowan tilted her head, smiling faintly. "You sound like you've done this before." "I haven't," he admitted, "but I've destroyed enough to know how things should hold together." They worked until the sun rose higher, until the sound of hammering faded into the chatter of nearby volunteers, locals from the town, who'd come to help rebuild what the fire had taken years ago. One of the women handed Rowan a bottle of water and said, "It's good to see someone breathing life back into this place. It's been quiet too long." Rowan thanked her softly, glancing toward the lake. The surface shimmered under the sunlight, unrecognizable from the night it had reflected flames. She still remembered that glow, the crackling, the smoke, but it no longer held her captive. The past had settled into something smaller, something she could carry without breaking. By afternoon, the outline of a small house had begun to take shape. Simple. 2 rooms, wide windows, a porch facing the lake. It didn't need to be more than that. May arrived just as they were finishing the framework, stepping out of a dusty pickup with her arm healed and a mischievous glint in her eyes. "You two look like a renovation ad gone wrong," she said, holding up a small wooden sign. "Thought this might help." Rowan wiped her hands and squinted at the carving. The letters were neat but slightly uneven. Hale Clinic. Free care for women. She blinked, stunned. "May, you didn't." May shrugged. "It's just a name. And an idea. You'll figure out the rest." Adrian leaned against one of the posts, smirking. "You always said you wanted to fix things, not fight them?" Rowan traced the letters with her fingers, the grain rough beneath her touch. "I just never thought I'd start here." May laughed. "You never do." As the sun dipped toward the ridgeline, the 3 of them sat on the half-built porch, watching the sky melt into amber and violet. The air smelled of sawdust and coffee. For once, there was no need for explanations. Rowan rested her elbows on the railing, eyes following the waterline. "If one day you have to go back," she said quietly, "to whatever that world is." Adrian turned toward her. "Then I'll still come back here. No one leaves the light without remembering where it was." She nodded, the corner of her mouth curving. The wind carried a faint whistle across the lake, rippling through the wildflowers that had claimed the burned ground. They stayed that way as twilight settled, 3 silhouettes against the fading glow, surrounded by the sound of hammers quieting, for the day, the rhythmic hush of waves brushing the shore. Rowan reached for the table beside her, running a hand across the smooth wood. The surface was cool, alive with grain and sunlight. She didn't need to say anything more. The world had already begun stitching itself back together in its quiet, imperfect way. Adrian's hand found hers again, his fingers rough but steady. She leaned her head back, eyes half closed, listening to the soft creak of the new beams overhead and the murmur of the lake below. When she finally looked up, the reflection in the water caught her gaze, the faint outline of sky cloud and 2 figures seated side by side. The image wavered, broken by a ripple, then came back whole. It wasn't perfect, but it held. Some fires burn everything to ash. Others clear the ground for what's meant to grow. Rowan learned that healing isn't forgetting, it's forgiving the parts of ourselves that survived. We don't walk out of the dark unchanged. We walk out knowing the light was always ours to keep. Carry that with you, the courage to rebuild, even if your hands still tremble.